Hey everyone, my name is Josh and welcome back to your fourth stimulus package and news update. In today's video, we have a lot of news to get into, but first, if you would like to receive one free stock from Robinhood, valued up to $200 just for signing up, make sure to claim it by clicking my link, which you will find in the description box below. Okay, so the Senate is officially back in Washington, which means the Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is right back to setting deadlines. Prior to leaving for the break, he said his chamber would pass the Build Back Better bill before Christmas. Of course, a vote never even happened. And now, in regards to voting rights legislation, Schumer is picking yet another deadline of January 17th for when they'll force debate on changing and possibly getting rid of the filibuster. In a letter Schumer issued yesterday, he said, "The Senate was designed to protect the political rights of the minority in the chamber, though the promise of debate and the opportunity to amend. But over the years, those rights have been warped and contorted to obstruct and embarrass the will of majority, something our founders explicitly opposed. The Constitution specified what measures demanded a supermajority, including impeachment or the ratification of treaties. But they explicitly rejected supermajority requirements for legislation, having learned firsthand of such a requirement's defects under the Articles of Confederation. The weaponization of rules once meant to short-circuit obstruction have been hijacked to guarantee obstruction. We must ask ourselves, if the right to vote is the cornerstone of our democracy, then how can we in good conscience allow for a situation in which the Republican Party can debate and pass voter suppression laws at the state level with only a simple majority vote, but not allow the United States Senate to do the same? We must adapt. The Senate must evolve like it has many times before. The Senate was designed to evolve and has evolved many times in our history. As former Senator Robert Byrd famously said, Senate rules must be changed to reflect changed circumstances. Put more plainly by Senator Byrd, Congress is not obliged to be bound by the dead hand of the past. The fight for the ballot is as old as the Republic. Over the coming weeks, the Senate will once again consider how to perfect this union and confront the historic challenges facing our democracy. We hope our Republican colleagues change course and work with us, but if they do not, the Senate will debate and consider changes to Senate rules on or before January 17th, Martin Luther King Jr. Day, to protect the foundation of our democracy, free and fair elections. If at least 10 Republicans fail to get on board with a piece of legislation dealing with voting rights, then they won't be able to pass the Freedom to Vote Act, nor the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. Democrats argue that by passing these bills, people would have more access to vote, since it would ensure all states have early voting, make Election Day a public holiday, and secure the availability of mail-in voting. Republicans, on the other hand, argue that these pieces of legislation are just another example of federal overreach, and the federal government should not get to decide how states handle their state elections. Republicans also argue that the proposed bills will erode the integrity of the voting process by allowing more access to mail-in voting and diluting voter ID requirements. So since we won't be seeing 10 Republicans getting on board with either of these bills, Democrats will instead need to find another way to pass the bill, since they won't get the 60 votes they need. And that's why Schumer and other Democrats hope to get rid of the filibuster, which would then allow for them to pass bills like this one, among others, with just a simple majority. The problem is, like I mentioned in other videos, is so far Joe Manchin, Kyrsten Sinema, and some other moderate Democrats have been opposed to getting rid of the filibuster. This is because they believe bipartisanship is very important and that in order for bills to pass in the Senate, they should have votes from both parties. Even though Sinema and Manchin are both in favor of these voting rights bills, they are not in favor of nixing the filibuster. In addition to that, they know, as well as many others, that if they did get rid of the filibuster, eventually Republicans will take control of the Senate once again and will be able to do the exact same thing. If the filibuster is no longer there, come next year, Republicans could also pass bills in the Senate with just a simple majority, rather than needing support from their Democratic colleagues. So, along with passing the Build Back Better bill, this will be one topic we'll definitely have to keep a close eye on. Now, in regards to Build Back Better, before the Senate left for the Christmas and New Year's break, Schumer did promise a vote on the bill once they returned. Even though Manchin said he could not get on board with the bill as it's currently written, Schumer is going to force his hand anyways and make him go down on record for voting no on the bill. This is mainly because other Democrats are pressuring Majority Leader Schumer to hold the vote in order to put more pressure on Manchin. Here is Democratic Representative Jamal Bowman saying why he's in favor of Schumer holding Manchin accountable.
It's the right decision. I am happy it's happening. I wish they could return immediately, but unfortunately, Senators Booker and Warren have tested positive for COVID, so we wish them well and a full and speedy recovery. But it's absolutely the right thing to do. Get Manchin on the record. It's one thing to talk the talk, but is he going to walk the walk and take that no vote and then go home and explain that no vote? Because at the end of the day, West Virginians are watching, and they have been watching for quite some time. But now I think they have a full understanding of who Joe Manchin is and what he represents. And my hope is that they hold him accountable for this in the next election. But also, even before we get there, engage the senator, force him to listen to his constituents and those who are struggling the most, as opposed to these lobbies that continue to support him. Listen, we have to determine and identify who we are as a country and who we want to be. Do we want to be the country of Joe Manchin and what he represents, or the country of Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley and Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez and others who are trying to move the country forward? The country's ready to move forward, not just after Trump, but in terms of levels of inequality and things that have persisted. And Manchin needs to get on board, and the majority of the country is already there.
Bowman also ripped into Manchin not long ago, saying that he doesn't care about people of color or people who are poor.
So this is exactly why tens of millions of Americans don't care about our government, don't trust our government, and are done with our government, not just the Republican Party, but the Democratic Party as well. I was infuriated when I heard those comments, but I wasn't surprised because we had been sounding the alarm on this for several months, worried about what Manchin was going to do when it was time for him to make a decision. It went from $3.5 trillion to $1.75 trillion because his special interests, his donors and lobbyists were cutting the bill for several months because they did not want this bill to pass. Why? Because this bill disproportionately supports people of color. It supports people of color. It supports women. It supports children. It supports those who are poor and lifts them out of poverty. Why wouldn't Manchin want to support that when this would benefit West Virginia tremendously? It's tremendously frustrating for me as a black man in America because once again, it's an example of Joe Manchin as a white man showing that he doesn't care about black people. He doesn't care about Latinos. He doesn't care about immigrants. He doesn't care about women, and he doesn't care about the poor. He is a millionaire, and he has the privilege to kick the can down the road and not vote for this bill while the people in my district are suffering. We just buried a 17-year-old who was shot dead in the head a couple of weeks ago. This bill has $2.5 billion for violence prevention. It has universal child care, universal pre-K. It finally deals with the climate issue. The same way black and brown people and women were kept out of the New Deal, Joe Manchin's trying to keep people out of this bill today, and it's unacceptable, and we need to do everything in our power to make sure it passes.
So what do you say that he reacts and says it's not about people of color or trying to oppress or any of those things? He has articulated it's about inflation. You're not buying that.
That's not true. There's no research, there's no studies that support that. Studies show, and Goldman Sachs pointed that out today, that if we pass Build Back Better, it will uplift the economy. It will uplift people who are living in poverty. It will create cash flow. And it is the best way for us to respond to the largest global pandemic we've had in 100 years. I mean, this is, he's out of touch. He's out of touch with the research. He's out of touch with present-day economists. And he's out of touch with the poor people in West Virginia and the people in my district who have been waiting their entire lives for this kind of support and investment from the federal government. And let me also say this. This is not just about Manchin. I mentioned it before. Big money in politics is destroying how we govern in Washington. Because if he were responsive to the people in West Virginia, where West Virginia has some of the highest poverty rates in the country, if he were responsive to them, he would behave and vote differently. But it's about his donors. He's had the biggest fundraising year of his career. It's about lobbyists who are spending more this year than they've ever spent in their entire existence. Speaking of pharmaceutical lobbyists. So let's speak about what the reality is. Big money in politics has to go. We have to respond to the American people, because if we don't have a democracy. Look at what just happened January 6th.
In some other news, New York Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez decided to have a getaway vacation to Florida. And now she's been facing criticism from Republicans for being at a crowded bar without a mask on. Other than that, Republicans have also pointed out that she's been hypocritical, fear-mongering about Florida and their COVID cases, but then spending a vacation there and not even wearing a mask. In response, AOC suggested that Republican critics are motivated by sexual frustrations due to the fact that they can't date her. In a tweet, she said, "If Republicans are mad they can't date me, they can just say that instead of projecting their sexual frustrations onto my boyfriend's feet. You creepy weirdos." She went on to tweet, "It's starting to get old. Ignoring the very obvious, strange, and deranged sexual frustrations that underpin the Republican fixation on me, women, and the LGBT plus people in general. These people clearly need therapy, won't do it, and use politics as their outlet instead. It's really weird." Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis also took some time to respond to AOC's trip to the Sunshine State.
Well, I mean, look, I think if I had $1 for every lockdown politician who decided to escape to Florida over the last 2 years, I'd be a pretty doggone wealthy man, let me tell you. I mean, Congress people, mayors, governors, I mean, you name it. And it's interesting, though, the reception that, that some of these folks will get in Florida, because I think a lot of Floridians say, wait a minute, you're bashing us because we're not doing your draconian policies, and yet we're the first place you want to flee to basically to be able to enjoy life. And so I'm not surprised to see that continue to happen. I could tell you, I mean, there are probably about a half dozen governors who had restrictions on their people and then were spotted at various points in Florida. Some of it's been public, some of it's not been public, but people tell me these things, and so these things are spotted, and so that's just the reality that we're dealing with. I think I'm happy, though, that Florida is a place where people know they can come and they can live like normal people. They can make their own decisions. Fauci, again, he's railing against the restaurants. I mean, these poor people have had, they've done very well in Florida because we protected them. But, this is not an industry that's easy to do very well in. And he's singling them out as if that is somehow such a huge factor when there's all these other things that you could be pointing to. I just think it's wrong. But people know they can come, they can go get a beer. They're not going to have to show papers. They're not going to have to do anything. And just look at what we're seeing now. How big of a failure have vaccine passports been? Okay, if vaccine passports succeeded, you would not see a lot of the stuff that you're seeing in a lot of states that implemented them. And so all it served to do was discriminate against people based on an individual choice, create a two-tiered society. And yes, they are moving, like I said a couple months ago, they are moving to update that to say, in some parts, they're going to say you need a third shot to be able to do. So those policies have not worked, and I think ultimately, look, people vote with their feet. I always say I'm so happy with our Floridians. I'm not asking for people to come move, because we've got great people. We've got a lot of great stuff going on. I think we're going to do a lot more great stuff. But the fact of the matter is, if you look from July of 2020 to July of 2021, we led the country in where people were wanting to come to. And I think that that's a result of protecting people's freedoms and making sure that we had a state worth living in.
So it's a new year, but clearly there's still a lot of drama taking place in Congress. But on that note, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this video. Again, if you would like to receive one free stock from Robinhood, valued up to $200 just for signing up, make sure to claim it by clicking my link in the description box below. So once again, I do hope that everyone has a great and safe rest of their day. And if you did enjoy the content in today's video, I would greatly appreciate if you would just take a couple of seconds out of your day to like this video, as that does definitely help out with the YouTube algorithm. And until next time, as always, I'll see you in the next video.